Please feel free to unmute. I'll take notes and share with us your feedback. Hi, Sharon. So good to see you.
Good to see you too. Good to see all of these many recognizable faces.
Yes. We have a couple of people still joining us. Okay, Michelle, Heather, Sharon, since you all are on camera, don't go off camera now. Anything you'd like to share as far as and it can be from the experience itself of speaking with the staffers and legislators, or any takeaways or anything that can inform the work we do in the future, or what you think we should follow up on with the staffers and legislators. Just anything you'd like to share.
I can go first, Michelle. So I would just say it was just a really powerful experience coming together in a shared space, outside of speaking with the different legislators and senators and their administrative assistants, just speaking with all of you about things and issues that we care about, and developing language around those issues was really powerful for me. I also really enjoyed the PowerPoint. That was obviously instrumental in moving our initiatives forward. And then just, how welcoming everyone was to our ideas and how we kind of all came together on these common objectives. And I feel like it was pretty powerful all in all, so.
Thank you. Did you feel, please jump in.
I was just going to say, I just have to echo what Heather shared. I think it's really powerful, even if we didn't get to speak to the actual assembly person or whatnot, having their representative present, I think is key. Being able to share. I think the powerful piece for me is the context, right? So being able to meet with the representative from my local region, I think is so important, because we don't have access to them. And I think right now we're in an interesting region because the other representative that we would have has left to go on do other things with someone else. So we're in a little bit of some turmoil with our legislators here in this region. And so having that one ear to speak to and hear these points was important. I think what really kind of stands out for me is being at a private institution yet again, or an independent, right, is the need for us, as we are credentialing over 50% of the teachers within the state, is for us to gather together and have a much more powerful voice than maybe what we have had. And I think that's really important, to come alongside our CSU colleagues in sharing that voice. And I think this survey that you have worked on, Nicole, can help kind of spur some of that conversation and some of that bringing together, so that our voices are definitely more united across both the public and the private independent colleges.
Thank you. And I know we're using the word powerful often, but I have to say that hearing you share about that unified voice, there's power in that. Absolutely. If we could come together and have a shared, well, you all already mentioned that you felt like there was some shared language, but if we could have this unified voice going forward, that would definitely make a huge impact. Yes, Kelly, please jump in.
Yes, so I put in the chat. First of all, I want to say thank you for all the participants in our breakout session with Dave Cortesi's staff. I can tell we had definite common concerns for our pre-service and new teachers in our counties and districts. But honestly, I'm not sure how well, I don't know if Dave Cortesi's staff really heard us in the sense of actual follow-up, because what we expressed was common barriers to the to our pre-service teachers, particularly on these assessments. And the response that I heard was more of more promoting Cortesi's bills, proposed bills that seem to direct more at retired teachers or veteran teachers. So I would just want to state that opinion.
Thank you. So would you say that you felt the response was more to share what their focus is on, as opposed to feeling that the response was taking in what we were sharing, that it was sort of a pivot back to what they are focused on for the bills they're currently writing?
Yeah, I don't think it was really hearing us out and actually taking what kind of follow-up steps to do from there. So, and I believe that the folks at Santa Clara County Office of Ed says, please look at Bill 2047. And I'm not sure if that was confirmed or what by David Cortesi's staff.
Okay, I'm definitely taking note, because I think we can hit some highlights as we do follow-up to. We will provide a follow-up memo to the legislators and staffers who visited with us. And so we'll include the points that were raised again in our follow-up, and hopefully that puts it back in front of them, at least. No, thank you for that feedback. Anyone else? So we're hearing a little bit about the experience in general. I hear hope about how possibly we can move forward. I'm also hearing concerns around whether or not we're really heard, which I think can speak to how we'll follow up. Yes, please, Sharon, jump in.
Yes, I'm looking at this from the perspective of an old timer. Okay, I'll start this off. And to think that we had an idea almost a decade ago that we came to the realization that we needed a voice, and we needed to create a mechanism to get a voice. And I just want to tell the committee and all of the members of Cal Council how well you've worked together and how hard you worked, and how we're beginning to see the fruits of it. That members want to hear what the professional organization has to say, and that we have a voice, we have a message that's based on data from the field, which is also very important. So it's not just the CSUs or the independents, it's the field, new teachers, veteran teachers, professors coming together on certain critical points. And one point that was very clear from the data was that this generation of teacher educators and institutions have made a breakthrough in recruiting a very diverse body of beginning teachers. I was so pleased and proud of that data set. Now, this is what we can't blow this time around, because class size reduction, we thought we were doing it. Then the next decade, we thought, oh, there's a window open. And where we're losing our best hopes and promise is in the retention cycle. And here the legislature really, really can help us with all those supports that the 5 to 10-year teacher needs. And those are things like economic support, support for affordable housing, support for training and education that doesn't come out of your pocket so that you can move ahead in the profession. Those are things that the legislature can help us with. So the pipeline is beginning to become stable again, but now we need to keep the people that are teaching children and teaching them well in the classroom and happy and improving their craft. Mic out.
Well, thank you for that. I think you brought us full circle. Yeah, it was about a decade or so ago when we started talking about, you know, how we can inform policy in an impactful way. And so to now be in breakout rooms, even when we, you know, we were stopping through, I think the first time we were walking the halls and trying to get into the offices, and now to actually have appointments and sit and talk with the legislators is helpful. And I think even to, I'm catching up in the chat too and thinking about what Kelly did voice. It is important that we continue to think about, well, what can we do next, right? So closing the loop, we had this space, had an opportunity to share, and now we want to make sure it was heard, or at least it's in writing, so you can refer back to what we said if you did hear us. And so we're constantly thinking about how do we get what's important in front of the legislators and staffers. And so the work never stops. I think it's great that we can be in community together as we're doing that work, but it never stops. It just keeps going. Yeah.
This is tough. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, we'll keep after it. No, and I mean, I appreciate the feedback. So we will pretty soon be piped into, I think, the main room, and we'll have an opportunity to hear as well what some of the feedback from their debrief or from their experiences, because while they were on site, they were also going into quiet places and joining several of the breakout rooms. So we'll hear from them. I'll share some of what was shared here, but also please feel free to share again if you'd like. If you feel you would want to affirm something you hear or add to it, please feel free to do so. But that will be in about 4 minutes. So please keep sharing here, or if you want to take a quick break while we wait to be pushed through to the main room, feel free to take a break. And then if you need to know the rest of the schedule, let me pull that up. We have we'll have another break at 1:15 after we finish the debrief, and then we'll come back at 1:30 for the CTC policy session. I'll need to confirm if that is hybrid. Oh, it is, it's live streamed. And then we have the final session close out at 2:45. That's also live stream. Adora, I'm seeing a lot in the chat. Do you feel comfortable unmuting to share about your experience? I mean, I was so fortunate to be in a space with you yesterday, and really appreciate what you brought forward related to partnering and bridging partnerships and listening and being in community with each other. And so if you're able, no pressure, if you want to just use the chat, that's fine too. But feel free to share your perspective as well. It looks like there's appreciation for Adora bringing up AB 2047.
I'm kind of curious as to what was brought up in that conversation. I didn't want to broach it in the conversation that we had, just because I feel like I need to know a little bit more about it. So having sat on the literacy team a few years back and looking at how we could revise or rethink RECA, and coming upon the stumbling block of it being connected to EdCode made it so challenging to talk about. Whereas from what I understand, our TPAs are not actually connected to EdCode. However, many of our other assessment practices are regarding content knowledge. So I know that I need to dig just a little bit more into that, but I would be curious as to the information that was shared.
Can I speak to that? you not
Please.
mind, Michelle? I think TPAs are actually connected to Ed Code. The TPA requirement was, I think, enacted July 1st, 2008. So it's a long-standing requirement. The way how we had our session was Adora started off facilitating, presenting the PowerPoint and the data, and then saying from there, what are some of the possible factors that are having our teachers not continue and retain in the profession. And the common themes that came up from our experiences of the participants was the barriers to pre-service and newly minted teachers, newly probationary teachers, and particularly those assessments. So we did address particularly TPAs, also RECA and CSET, and said that for financial as well as for the amount of stress and the passing rate being at 50%, it does not seem conducive or encouraging for any of our teachers, and a number of them teachers of color, to continue on in the profession. And we had lots of anecdotal experiences of where we had that, where we shared. So, and that's when you came in.
Adora, did you want to add? Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry, I was on a phone call, so I just got a text that my name was mentioned. So
I'm sorry. No problem. My apologies.
No worries. I thought it was a really good session. I think what I appreciated from the session more than anything was that the staffer agreed to take back to Dave Cortese and push for AB 2047, which really made me feel like, okay, this was a worthwhile meeting, right? We walked away with a small, but hopefully impactful win, right, in our conversation. And I appreciated the contributions of the people in the room, because everybody was on target, everybody was unified and clearly presented a picture of what's happening holistically in educator preparation programs. And I thought that was really impactful, that we're all on the same page and able to present the same thinking and the same experiences. We're all having the same experiences. So I thought it was a great session.
Thank you. And did you have any other thoughts related to the TPA conversation? Was that in your room too, where you all talked about that particular?
We did talk about the TPAs, and I'm going to back up just a minute, because I think what's more important here, which we discussed, was the assessments being barriers for people of color. Mm-hmm. And throughout history, we know that assessments have always been barriers for children of color, for people of color. And part of that is about language used and accessibility, which most people of color have not had great experiences when it comes to accessibility and exposure and opportunity, which then reflects on your ability to demonstrate or perform on assessments, because they're all standardized, right? So the other thing that came up with the TPAs was that Representative Cortese is willing to look at and discuss removing the TPA as a requirement. But what's interesting to me is that we have the TPAs, which is a performance assessment, And if you're able to pass it, and most people of color somehow muddle through, they don't score really well, but most of the time they might muddle through. Then on the other hand, you have the CSAT. So now I have to prove my performance, and I have to regurgitate from memory things that I remember or know. And so it's like a double whammy. It's like, it's really about performance, right? Because that's what our prep programs prepare us for. It's not about regurgitation. So if both of them don't go, at least one of them needs to go, because we can't expect people to continue to jump through hoops and then want to be part of the education profession. And so that's kind of where our discussion led. And Tara said the area that Dave Cortese has influence over is AB 2047, and she would take it back to him to advocate for that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I agree with you. That it feels like a small win, and we shall see, because I think we'll need to follow up with reminders, is what I'm hearing from Kelly too. You know, so we'll stay on top of that. I did just receive word it'll be 12:30, so we can keep talking for the next 4 minutes. Or if we want to stretch, feel free to stretch. In general, I captured in my notes. Oh, I have more comments coming in. Let me make sure I capture everything. Yes, I'm seeing in the chat, candidates go through a strenuous and rigid process then to enter a profession, least paid, from Dr. Bartholomew. No, I think these are important points for us to consider. I am saving the chat just in case I don't capture everything in my notes, but in general, it seems like this was very helpful for us to be in the space, to have a unified voice, to have shared language, to be able to be heard by the legislators and staffers. And now we just need to, as I've said a couple of times already, we need to just close the loop and circle back with them and make sure they have the resources from us and the materials from us to remind them of what direction we're asking them to go on these bills. Assessments is a huge topic. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, Nicole, listening to Adora, we're beginning to mimic what we do to K-12 students, right? Constant assessment. And, you know, once teachers, let's say they do pass all of those assessments and they get in, then those first 2 years we do induction. And I think, induction's important. I think it's the way that it's done, where it's then again attached to a form of assessment, right? And rather than reflection and, you know, mentoring, it becomes just another piece. Like, here's a rubric, I'm going to assess you on this as your mentor. So it's that constant piece that maybe needs to be rethought.
Mm-hmm.
If you allow me to chime in, I did not get a chance to attend all the legislative sessions. I got pulled into a bunch of other meetings. But one of the things I talked about with, I think it was Mary Sandy last fall, that I think is still applies, is that if the CTC in the state has given IHEs sort of the power and authority to assess teacher readiness, candidate readiness to be in the field, then I am asking the question, what's the purpose of the EdTPA? Because it appears to me to be redundant. It's also a way of saying, we don't trust you. You've done your work, now we're going to do our work to go behind you and verify that you actually did the very thing that you were professionally trained to do. So I think part of the process, I mean, honestly, I think it is about, you know, having a real conversation about what is the role of the IHE. We're supposed to produce somebody and then you decide, or do we decide and it's just done at that point?
That's a good point. I see a lot of good stuff in the chat. If anyone wants to unmute and share or add to what you may have shared already. I see a new face on the screen, Kapana. So I don't know if you want to jump in. Well, good to see you. Good to see you. But those are good points. I think in the chat, I don't know, Rob, if you're seeing it, there's some agreement with the comment you just made, that it does feel like it's creating this distrust or maybe even feeding into the distrust.
Yeah, this is origins in patriarchy and sexism.
Yeah. And so we did add some questions to our end of conference survey that are optional questions, because we do ask you to provide your, which I know none of you here would have a problem providing your name and email address, but we do ask about the TPA and how you feel about it, so that we can take those data back to Chelsea Kelly from our first session. So I'm capturing information that's being shared here to include in that follow-up, but if you also feel comfortable responding, and I try to make as few questions required as possible. That way, if you choose to just skip and just add to the TPA part of the survey, you're welcome to do that. And I'm happy to drop the link in now for those of you who might not be staying until the very end of the conference. That way you'll just have access to it. So I'll grab that now. Okay. And you can feel free to hold it until we're at the very end, or if you, again, as I mentioned, even if you choose to skip a couple of items, please feel free to do so. Okay, I'm letting the main room know we're ready when they are. And there we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's just great to see everyone enjoying lunch. Great to see everyone hanging out on Zoom. We've got 24 people on Zoom. So before I get started, I'm going to make sure, oh, I know what it is. There, I knew I had to mute one more thing. Make sure all our tech team is lined up. Thanks again to everybody in the back of the house for all the help today. Thanks again for Sarah, Patricia, Nicole, Yesenia on Zoom, keeping everything moving. We're continuing with our great hybrid format, which continues to be a pilot experiment, but I think it's working really well. And I know on Zoom, I see from the chat that they've already started some of their debrief of the ledge visits that we just got to do. So we're going to continue in that vein, take some time now to do some sharing of what we learned, what we heard. If any of you have been to an AACTE Day on the Hill or anything like that, would you raise your hand? A few of you have been. Yes, we have our team here from CCTE, but the way those are structured generally is the way that we've structured this conference, which starts the day before, yesterday, with some orientation to our priorities, kind of getting our head into this work, taking time to review our survey data, and then preparing for the ledge visits themselves, which we've now just had. And now we have some time to debrief, to continue the learning process together and to identify perhaps next steps and things that we might want to do as follow-up. I want to start by assuring you that the policy committee will follow up with everyone who we visited with an email that has the slides, a thank you, and information about CCTE and contact info for the policy committee. So we will be doing that. And then also when the Real Lab completes its analysis and creates its really beautiful reports as it did last year, we'll send those out to everyone who we visited with as well. So they'll have some of that follow up. I hope that you've already started to share ideas and share what you experienced today, this morning. So we're going to do this pretty informally. I think we're all going to take notes, all of us on the policy committee. So I know Nicole and Pia will be taking notes too. We want to hear from you. We have a mic up here. I can see things in the chat. Nicole, you can let me know if anybody wants to just unmute themselves and share from the group on Zoom. We have till about 1:15 before we have another short break, and then we start with our presentation from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, who are all right here also listening to our debrief. And I want to invite any of you from the CTC to chime in with your wisdom and experience around this kind of work of advocating for educator preparation. So I'm just going to get this mic. I bet that Carol probably has a mic too. I'm also going to put my handy dandy little bottle of hand sanitizer next to this mic in case anybody wants to use that. So I'm just going to invite people to come right up here. You can share as a group if a group wants to come up, or if you just want to send somebody from your team, or if you just yourself have an insight that you want to share. So before we actually start, I want to go over the goals that were on the slide. We had goals on the second slide that were really to introduce our group to your legislative staffer or the assembly person or the senator, to make sure they know what CCT is about and what we bring, to share our talking points from the slides. So you can debrief now on any of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and invite the debrief to start, and I will sit up here and take notes, and come on up and grab a mic, or let me know if there's anybody, Nicole, let me know if there's anybody who wants to share from Zoom. Here comes Steve. Good.
Hi, everyone. Steve Batista, Santa Ana College and ACTEP. This is more of an inquiry that kind of came up in discussion with one of the representatives in terms of the timeline. She was sharing with us that the fall is typically when bills are written and introduced into the legislative process, yet we're having these conversations in the spring. And the timeline is actually, it was like in mid-February is when I think they were all the deadline for introduction. So I'm wondering, what is the strategy in terms of, again, the total newbie question, not coming to CCTE very often and understanding the process of having the conversations now in the spring once bills are written versus conversations that are maybe happening in the fall as the legislation is being produced. So
that's a great question. We do have a kind of a cycle of policy activities that we're learning how to do in CCTE. And that includes some activities in the fall and then this set of activities in the spring. This is the time when we're kind of, was that, oh, I thought I heard Pia. If Pia's here, you jump in too, Pia. No, you don't get to eat lunch. I'll start and you chime in, anybody else. But how we're imagining it is a little of both, Steve, so that in the fall, and especially at the fall conference, if any of you go to the San Diego Fall Conference, taking the time there in the 2 policy sessions to build awareness of the bills that are being generated, ways to contact our legislators. Before COVID, we had great plans to invite all of us and all the policy committee folks to make visits to the home offices. So our awareness and our action kind of does have to span the whole year, haha. And then, but at this meeting where we can take specific action on things that are already proposed, and that was one of our debriefs actually in our group with Eric and me and Jennifer. So do you want to come up and share a little bit about that? Then you can continue eating your lunch, Pia, if you want.
Let Pia eat her lunch. Yeah, so we had a great debrief afterwards. One of the things that we talked about is also knowing what our ask is, so that when we talk to staffers or when we talk to legislators, we can say, and these are the bills that we really would like your support on. I mean, that's something I learned from AACTE Days on the Hill, is know what the ask is. And they seem to really like that. They seem to appreciate that. So just a couple of ideas that we had is that maybe Chelsea gives us that great debrief. Maybe that should be 2 weeks in advance of the actual SPAN meeting, done by Zoom. So we hear it and we can have some time to digest what it is and think about what the ask is. And the other thing that we thought about is maybe we need some mini ledge visits Thursday morning of the San Diego conference before the official conference starts. But when SIGs are meeting, we could actually do some online visits that way. But really having that clear ask and letting them know exactly not just what we like and what we support, but here's some specific things that we can help you with. So.
Thanks, Eric. I'm scanning the Zoom crew to see if there's anybody. I don't see anything in the chat. No, come on up. There's nobody that I see. Here comes Bettina. Okay.
So a few observations from our room. I really appreciated folks bringing up, this came up yesterday, private and independent colleges, and making sure that all the bills that are sponsored also bring in private and independent colleges. So that was one thing that came up. And then the other thing that came up is we as an organization, right, have diverse views on sometimes controversial policies, like the one that was dropped on us yesterday regarding the teaching performance assessment. So we're hoping that the policy committee can send out a member survey. I know it's part of our end survey for SPAN, but for those of our members who are not here, a little bit of context around that bill, that spot bill, and a sense of where we stand as a membership, because I think we stand in many different places. And so that's something for then the executive committee and the policy committee to come together to look at, so that we can actually convey some statements and some points as a unified body. Because I think it's really hard when you're in session and people have very strong feelings. I have very strong feelings about that bill. But I don't want to, as president-elect, as somebody who is in an executive position, I don't want to speak for the organization about my own personal beliefs. And so I think agreeing with what Eric said, Chelsea having a little bit more time. I mean, even if she just presented to the executive committee or to the executive and the policy committees so that we could then have clearer asks. But I also just want to acknowledge the work that Pia, Cindy, and Nicole did in putting together that PowerPoint, because that was amazing. And a lot of the assembly people, state senators, you know, once they got in the room, we confirmed how much time we had, and it was not 1 hour, it was 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. And if we had not had that PowerPoint, having a cohesive conversation would have been really difficult. So thank you for putting that together so we had clear asks. Oh, and last thing, bilingual education advocates, our assembly person was great. And he was like, so how do we incentivize more bilingual teachers? Maybe we should give them extra funds for getting like bilingual certification. So we talked a lot about bilingual certification being an additional stipend for teachers.
Thank you, Bettina. I was just looking out the window to see if all that booming going on out there, and I don't like. Yes, please. And then I saw a hand up here. Karen, let's hear from you, and then Karen. Yeah, that's fine. We're good.
Thank you so much, those of you who came to our breakout group. One of the strategies that I came up with, I deliberately selected Jose Medina, and I also asked Sharon Merritt, all of you know Sharon from COBTE, to come to that session. And because she is so knowledgeable. So I think one of the things maybe we find individuals who are extremely knowledgeable about certain topics, if that's something that assembly person is bills that they're sponsoring. So we target an individual or a couple of individuals who are extremely knowledgeable about that, so that they can speak to that also. So that was another thing I wanted to bring up that we did.
That's great. Thank you. Karen. And then I'm going to go to Nicole on Zoom.
Thank you, friends. So I had the privilege to speak to Senator Leyva, I've already forgotten now, Leyva, this morning. And I will say that she was so receptive. So I'm at CSU San Bernardino, and she's state senator for the Inland Empire and part of LA County. And she asked questions about the slides. She was so engaged, and that was really exciting. And then at 10 o'clock, I facilitated a session with the principal support provider for Dr. Arumbala. And she was typing away, asking questions, asked for the slide deck, so engaged as well. And it was such a joy to have folks that truly wanted to hear our voices and were concerned and wanted to share our successes, hear what our organization had to say. And Amber contributed to the conversation in this morning, which was fantastic. So what did you say? As quickly as you could, but it was great to get that additional information in there. So as I was talking, Amber quickly researched the senator so that she was able to make some personal connections to the senator, which was awesome. And so to leave that impression. But I think, and I appreciate so much Sarah Johnson for doing all this, because I think we had almost, congrats to Sarah Johnson on this, because everyone that I was able to participate with was engaged and really present to hear what we had to say. So.
Thanks, Karen, for that summary. That's awesome. Nicole, let's point to you on Zoom. Can we project the speaker on Zoom? We're not seeing you quite yet.
Okay.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Okay, got you. All right. Oh, there you are.
Yes. The voice that hangs out from in the middle of nowhere land. So we had some really great conversation here, and just right before we joined you all, and collectively, lots of comments around the power of being able to come together in a shared space using shared language to have conversations with the legislators. There were many of our colleagues here who noted that that was powerful to be in the space in that way. We did signal the importance of closing the loop, so that follow-up message from us back to the legislators and staffers who were able to attend, it will be important, because it was felt and expressed in a very honest and authentic way that there may have been moments where we were sharing what was important and what was needed, what needed to be given attention, but that sometimes the response may have been specific to a bill that was the focus for the legislator or staffer. And that bill may not have necessarily been one that we were speaking to. So just the importance of circling back again and reminding the legislators and staffers about what it was that we were focusing on in our sessions, that will be important. We also had just some recognition of how far we've come, how over a decade ago we talked about doing this work. And then we moved from walking the halls of the Capitol to actually having appointments. So yes, much appreciation to Sarah Johnson for the continued work in that area, but just really noting the great value of that and recognizing that we have work we need to continue on to do. And that really pertains to how we close the loop and how we continue to stay in the conversation with staffers. Those were some of the key things. I welcome anyone else who is in the virtual space to please unmute and share if I've missed anything that you feel is critical. We did have a robust conversation related to the TPA, which I know we'll follow up on as well. I do think that it's important for me to mention that, because really important to know that we have some shared feelings. And also I know that there, as Bettina noted, there are people who may have opposing perspectives. And so that a survey we'll send out at the end of the conference will be important. And I have noted that we should maybe consider sending out something additional. I think that will be important too. Anyone else? in our virtual space?
Yeah, I don't mind saying, yeah, I'm going to say something. Hi, Cindy. So I just want to say on behalf of our sessions, we had a nice collective group of of County Office of Education, County of Office of Education, plus IHEs, plus different types of people that have experience with newly minted teachers and or pre-service teachers. And we had common barriers that we shared. And it was just really nice to see from our different backgrounds how we're seeing the same majority of the same issues that we brought to David Cortesi's staff attention. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. That's a great note about, we had that too, where we just had people from in our small group from different institutions, different types of teacher prep. So I think that's a strength that we bring to these visits for sure. While we're thinking about online, is there anybody else who is on the Zoom call who wants to unmute and say hi and say your ideas?
Jump in. I'm Adora Fisher, Santa Clara County Office of Education. I would like to, Kelly was in my session. We had a really good conversation and walked away feeling heard, which was good, as well as sharing with colleagues, which was also amazing. But there's one thing that came up in our session that I really think we need to think on as a whole, and that is the workforce, which is huge right now. And I'm feeling that as educators, it's something we can leverage, because I don't think people realize the number of people in the education field, whether they're custodians or cafeteria workers or whatever, that contribute to the workforce. And we are losing them because of the barriers that some of the legislation that has come down the pike have put in front of us all. Not just people of color, but we're losing this new generation of possible candidates who are not interested in becoming teachers because of the pay, because of the requirements to get through, to get a credential. I mean, we could go on and on. But the key here that if we really think about it is about the future workforce. And we are not going to have a solid, dependable teacher workforce or professional educator, professional workforce, unless some things change. And I really, I just really can't stress that enough.
Thanks, Adora. Agree. Appreciate that. Well, let me open it up to anyone, either on Zoom or in the room. Yeah, Virginia.
So Tina and I met with Elle Hawksworth, staffer to Mr. Jesse Gabriel in the San Fernando Valley area. And I chose that because I teach at Cal State Northridge, which is in the same San Fernando Valley. And turns out that she was a teacher for 6 years. So, and her husband is currently a teacher. So lots of education talk in their household. And so the things we were mentioning really, she agreed with, made sense to her. She really appreciated the survey, right? She loved the statistics, the numbers that we got. She said it really gave her something to grab onto for the big picture. And do you want to mention the bills? You want me to? Okay.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Tina Wilkie from Las Virgenes Unified Center at X. So Elle shared with us two bills that Jesse Gabriel is working on, AB 2284, which is the digital literacy training program to educate educators how to teach their students about digital literacy, help them with social media, help them just navigate the world that we live in that's digital now. And also AB 2072, which is the Youth Mental Health and Disaster Preparedness Bill. And that is designed to fund ways for districts and to work together. If let's say we're Las Virgenes, and if we were hit hard by a disaster, that we could work with Oak Park and Conejo and parts of LA Unified to supply counselors, mental health counselors to our district. So I thought that was really exciting to be able to be funded to work together. That's great.
Okay, all right, thanks. Thank you. And I liked your comment about talking with somebody who themselves is a former teacher or connected to the education world outside of their actual job. That's great. Did anybody else meet people like that who are educators and now they're working in this area? Is that, I don't know if that's unusual. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about, speaking of Sarah Johnson and our appreciation, she scheduled 17 visits for us. And I think yeah, there she is. Appreciation. Yes. And Sarah, before you hide away, I was thinking about like that number of appointments for this size of group and what you just said about there were just a couple of you plus the staffer. That's kind of a nice size, not to be like 10 people in a Zoom room with a staffer. I think we had some bigger groups of maybe 5 or 6 in some, but so Sarah, I don't know if you have a plan when you set out to make visits with everybody, but I know we do try to get at everybody on the education committees for the Senate and the Assembly and the Higher Ed Committee. So that seems to be kind of a good number of many more than that. We might be spread a little thin, at least this year, but yeah, just in terms of general feedback. Also, Sarah, to your credit, we really had very few last minute changes. Like we had a couple of people who were late, right? 2, yeah, just a few. So that was great. I think that goes to your communication with them and how early you started. How early did you start? In December? Yeah. Yeah, not too far in advance, but early enough so we get on their calendar. I was also just wondering about, we had the slides as a tool. We had we provided the link for the assembly person or the senator's website. Was that helpful to have that before you got into the conversation? Okay, good. Any other practical? Yeah, come on up. Allison. Okay. I'll rephrase if we can. Oh, we'll bring you a mic. There we go.
Thank you.
I was wondering if we could compile a resource where we could put information in of any kind of topics that certain assembly members, senators were interested in, that piqued their interest. For instance, I was with Bettina and I didn't know that we were with, well, I knew we were with Senator Choi. I didn't know that he was so interested in bilingual education, which I find fabulous. I was very excited about that. And then I do work with that and with COBTE, and so I've shared that, but it would be nice if we had something together for that, because if I'm working on something and really, passionate about it, it would be nice to know which people I could maybe go to make it actionable. I'm sure that in all of the meetings, there were certain things that really piqued their interest, and just having that in a kind of a together, a resource, I think would help us across CCTE.
That could be a really good policy committee project of just pulling together some of the things that stood out at this set of visits and just compile a living document of things. Yeah. Yeah, there's a mic right there.
Hi, everyone. So we've heard this kind of a lot. A lot of people have said it, but I found that we were very well received in that I was in 3 meetings and that they're hungry for data and anecdotes and information from the field. And so having us there was useful. And I, just from my own experience trying to communicate with teachers and schools right now, they do not have the resources to be lobbying, to be sharing their stories, to be doing surveys and participating in surveys and gathering data. So I'm just grateful that we were able to do that and provide that, and just to recognize how important it is, because we do have different perspectives, that we take the time to do that work for the people that are underwater in schools right now. They can't lobby. And here at our table, we also were talking about Pearson's and for-profit companies and how easy they get to the table and how easily they're exposed to senators and their voices are heard, whereas field practitioners aren't. And so just making this a priority and having the survey and all of our stories shared, I thought was really inspiring and hopeful that everyone took the time to do that. And then I had a question too for Sarah. So that Sarah Johnson, sorry to bring her back out. If we want to continue doing this work, or maybe in the fall with our own organizations to organize, communities of practice that could do a little more lobbying, is there any advice you have to successfully scheduling meetings? If we want to, set goals within our own institutions to be doing a little bit more, that you could provide?
Great question. Let's hear how she does this.
Okay, so you want to be really persistent. And when they say no, they don't really mean no. You just keep trying. And it's best to email, call. And then once they get to know you, they're really responsive. Like this year for PSND night, it was much easier to set up the visits because we've done it for quite a few years and they know us and they're comfortable speaking to us. So once you open the door, it's a lot easier. I highly recommend that you contact them year round. So they won't schedule until December for our conference, but we start earlier in the year, just sending them, reminder, we're coming again. And then when they get the dates, we send them, save the date. And so they know when we're coming. So hopefully they can attend again. Well, they'll want you to start on their website because they have a schedule request. So you send that and then you wait a few weeks and sometimes they'll respond. A lot of times they will not. And then I follow up and call the office. And then because we already have the contact information, if we don't get a response, we email the contact information. But they'll ask you, if you call the office and you haven't done a scheduling request, they'll send you back there.
I think it is important to note that Sarah Johnson is a professor and has a full-time job. And it's not that. I just wanted to say one thing as I'm walking this mic over to Erin Sullivan. I wanted to also recognize several people have mentioned the survey, and I just want to put a shout out again to Nicole Howard and her group, and to the policy committee, who 2 years in a row has sort of turned this idea of a survey into an actual instrument. You all have gotten it out the door, and then Nicole's lab has sort of made it into a set of data that we can talk about. So it's such an amazing team effort where the assets of all of our different sort of stakeholders and interest groups sort of get put into this project, which is called SPAN. So I really am very, very grateful for the work that everybody does from their own position of strength, and also just the positive experience. We've been trying at this for a long time, and I think we really, really sort of scored a win this time. So thanks to everybody who did whatever you did to make it happen.
I'm really hesitant to follow that. That sounded like a closer. So Erin Sullivan, Commission on Teacher Credentialing. A lot of you know me in my role in the Professional Services Division, but before I came into this division, I was in our Government Relations Office. And so I'm hearing a lot of conversations and I'm just over here sitting on my hands like, oh, I have an answer for that. I have an answer for that. So I would just like to potentially offer that in my role in OGR, one of the things we regularly did at the CCAC conference was we did like a Ledge 101, where we kind of talked about the process and what we had learned and what the bills were and things like that. It could potentially be really valuable. So I am offering that up. Now, I won't be the OGR, I'm filling that role right now because our Ledge person left, so I'm wearing 2 hats. So we will have, somebody, but it might be really nice. And just in regard to getting appointments, getting on their calendars, and as well as being persistent, I will just say, if you ask for, oh, we only want 15, maybe 30 minutes, you will have a lot more luck than if you ask for an hour. An hour is a lot for a lawmaker. And if you get in there, if you get your foot in the door and you dazzle them in that first like 5 minutes, they'll sit with you for an hour if they want to. But just asking for just a little, 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 it's an easier ask for sure. You'll get in the door a little more quickly. Yeah.
I wrote that down, Erin. We would love to take you up on that. And it might be that we start with the policy committee and then branch out from there, but that's awesome. Yeah. Let me check my Zoom, folks. Are we good in Zoom world? Nicole, we hearing anybody else who wants to share any feedback?
Nothing additional yet.
Okay.
Just clarifying for each other what we're hearing. So thank you for passing the mic so that we can hear clearly in the main room.
Great. Well, let the debriefing continue. Just as you continue your conversations, keep thinking together. We are sending out a survey at the end of this conference that will be a feedback thing for you about this feedback vehicle for the conference itself, but also some questions about the ledge visits and a couple questions about that spot bill, just so we can start to get some follow-up. But please do fill out the survey. That'll help us a lot, both for planning next year and then also taking next steps. So I'm going to hand it over to Pia to wrap up this session. And thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Cindy. So just one piece of information about next steps. We will take that Google slideshow, put it in, clean it up a little bit, put it into a PDF, and then from the co-chairs, we'll send out a thank you to each of the people that we met with and send them the presentation. I'd love to include information about who they met with. So if anybody has objections to being included in that email, make sure you see me before the end of the conference. Otherwise, I will turn you loose on the legislator world. Yeah, and the idea would just be like, these are the people you talk to. If you'd like to follow up, you heard something really interesting, or they had some information, you can do that, and then you all can start your own conversations with them. I did have one little quick question to ask. For how many people was this your first time doing something like this? If you could raise your hand. Okay, and then one finger being like it was horrible, and 5 fingers being it was way better than I thought. Well, how was it for you? Yay! All right, thank you so much, everybody.
So we now have a break until 1:30. Is that right? 1:30, when the CTC team will be up here for their presentation. So there's probably a lot more lunch there, and definitely coffee and dessert. So hang out, and we'll be back together at 1:30.